Lovely. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. I really want to thank you for joining me for this male veteran trip. I'm always saying that I work with high performance women and a few awesome men. And so I am glad to know you as an awesome man. And I look forward to what it is that you would share about being a veteran today, about being um, a man today, about being a community advocate today. Are you ready for some good questions?
Yes, ma'am, I am. I do appreciate you, and I am humbled by the fact and the opportunity to be able to, of course, be here today. So I am definitely ready.
Great, great, great. So, Troy, since this will be a military trip video, I would like it if you could start out by telling me about your experience with the military.
Yes, ma'am. That is, of course, needless to say, one of the easy things to do. For starters, I am a 20-year service member with the Army, infantryman by trade. I began my one station unit training here at Fort Benning, Georgia. After completion of that, I went to Fort Hood, Texas, where I served with 2nd Battalion, 25 Cav, 1st Cavalry Division. Upon my tour with 1st Cav and what have you, I went to jump school, and then I was assigned to Fort Bragg with 1st Battalion, 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment, at which time I then deployed with the 1st Battalion, 505th in support of Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Upon completion of that particular tour, I was then basically caused to go to Camp Greaves, Korea, to where I was assigned as a scout with the reconnaissance platoon, first of the 1st Battalion, 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment, Camp Greaves up on the DMZ at that time, which they don't have that mission anymore. Upon my 1-year tour in Korea, I then was once again sent back to Fort Bragg, to which I was assigned to 2nd Battalion, 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment. And while there, I was able to, of course, attend Ranger School and do some great things, along with being a part of a deployment in support of Operation Restore Democracy for the invasion of Haiti, to which basically the dictator there capitulated because they saw the mighty 82nd Airborne on the way, and he decided that it would be best for him to go ahead and give up. So I was very, very proud of that. So with my time being done with the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment, I was then selected and, of course, became a drill sergeant, to where I trained for 2 years, recruits turning them into soldiers, which was a unexpected honor, which I enjoyed that quite a bit. So after I finished that, Iraqi freedom began in earnest. And then I was, of course, redeployed or resent back to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. At this time, I was assigned to 2nd Battalion, 325th Airborne Infantry Regiment, and then deployed in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom 1 through 3. And so as you can see, I had several combat deployments. As I said, infantryman by trade, and pretty much took over a company there at the 82nd 325. And then I came down to Fort Benning and took over a company here. And I, of course, retired here in Fort Benning, Georgia.
Wow. So, Mr. Hilderbrand, it kind of sounds like you spent quite a bit of time at Fort Bragg. How much time did you spend there?
Ma'am, I would say out of the 20 years I was there, at least 17 years.
17 years. Yeah, a great many years. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot. And I heard you say that when you were a drill sergeant, that was an unexpected honor. Can you share a little more about that unexpected honor in being a drill sergeant with us?
Absolutely, ma'am. Initially, when I got assigned to be a drill sergeant, I had initially had plans to try out for Special Forces assessment and selection. And so my mind was set on becoming a Special Forces soldier. But simultaneous orders came down for assessment, as well as, of course, the drill sergeant's course. And with that being said, I ignored them a couple of times. And then the brigade sergeant's major personally gave me an invitation to go to drill sergeant school. And what he asked me to look at my collar and look at his and tell me which one I was going to do. And with bowed head, I said, drill sergeant. So with that being said, when I got to be a drill sergeant, and I was a drill sergeant here at Fort Benning again, I was very disgruntled and very, very hostile. But the more I did it, the more I start watching that you are able to inculcate these civilians and teach them how their first beginnings of what a soldier is like, which is a very important job. And the mentoring and the coaching doesn't just stop there, it continues throughout their career. And to this day, I still have young men who reach out to me and thank me for bringing a little bit of smoke on them.
Okay, so you got to enjoy bringing smoke on others. How cool is that? So, Mr. Hilderbrand, in enjoying all that you did in the military, I heard you say that you did 20 years. What was it that made you hang up that hat?
Well, yes, ma'am. As an infantryman, I've had the honor to do everything from rifleman all the way up to command sergeant's major, which was, of course, one of the next to last assignments I had. And for the short term that I was standing in as a sergeant's major, I got to understand that the command sergeant's major position, in my opinion, was a little further away from actual leadership in the way that I was used to. And couple that to my opinion, also was a lot more political than I cared to be. So I knew it was time to transition to the civilian sector.
So you said transition to the civilian sector. Have you found your place as a civilian, Mr. Hildebrand?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I finally found my place. It took a little while though, because of the fact it started out kind of difficult because for most of my adult life, I pretty much was given a mission, task, and purpose, had given others mission, task, and purpose. And in the civilian sector, even though it is there, it is not as cut and dry as it is in the military. And the quality of individuals initially, in my opinion, lacked a little bit compared to what I had been used to being around. Because you're talking about the organizations that I've been associated with were type A personalities. And it was just very, very interesting to get used to an environment where individuals are very cutthroat. They'll use you to get ahead. They will, of course, do all manner of things without wanting to put in the work. And they didn't believe in a bigger than themselves concept like I was used to in the military.
Okay, the bigger than yourself concept. So you have found your place as a civilian. Can you tell me about, your journey in finding yourself as a civilian?
Yes, ma'am. As I said, with those challenges that I initially spoke about, it was, of course, trying to find out where I belonged. And I was raised by parents that pretty much instilled that it didn't make any difference what you wanted to do. If it turned a dollar to take care of your family, you did whatever you had to do. So on my quest to getting where I am now, I'd been a corrections officer, which I detested. Because he who is in jail also. He who keeps me in jail is in jail also, and a couple of other things, but finding the niche of what I do now was more satisfying because once again, working with the military and teaching, I really very much enjoy.
Okay. He said he really enjoys teaching. So, Troy, I believe that the way you lead and live your life should be a model for others. So, in saying that, I heard you talk about mentoring men as a drill sergeant, how honorable that was for you. Can you tell me how you lead and live your life that demonstrates manhood for others?
Yes, ma'am. My first and foremost, I believe in personal accountability and responsibility, which I think is one of the things that sometimes we are missing in our society. We always have a tendency to want to blame someone else for our downfalls, for the decisions that we made or failed to make, did not have the courage to make. And then negative things come out of it instead of just, of course, placing the blame on that man or that woman in the mirror. And with that being said, it took a while to learn because I was also that person that blamed others for my downfalls. But once I learned that, hey, most of the good was, of course, an act of the grand architect, the higher power that happened in my life. But most of the bad was because of a decision I didn't have the courage to make, or I chose the easy wrong over the hard right.
Mm. Easy wrong over the hard right. We see that in our community. And being that we see that in our community, can you tell me how you lead and how you live your life that demonstrates community for your community?
Yes, ma'am. First and foremost, I would say the key thing that I also aspire to be is humble, because of the fact that sometimes, once again, kind of tying in with the previous, one can start to believe their own hype, and that's a poison. So, what we have to do is first and foremost be humble. And if you're humble, you'll realize that we are all kind of here to serve one another. And some of the things that I do and have done in the past is one of the biggest passions are the homeless, which we do understand that there's a large homeless veteran community where I live and all over the place throughout the United States. So after an individual serves their country, he or she should be taken care of. And even though I don't have the resources to do it large scale, I can assist in, of course, feeding these uh, heroes, if you will, or these persons in need. And that's one of the things that I like to do. The other thing I like to do from time to time, which of course are elderly, where me and an organization that I belong to would go and we'd play bingo. This was prior to, of course, COVID, but we played bingo with the elderly, and you would just see the light up in their eyes, and realizing, Lee, that sometimes you're the only visit that they get.
Mm.
And to be a part of that, you really draw close to them, and they draw close to you, and they look forward to seeing you come.
So sound like that hero doubled up there. Yeah, sound like that heroism doubled up there. You were a hero for the
Mhm.
elderly, and you were hero for our homeless veterans. And so I wonder about you being a hero for the family. So can you tell me how it is that you lead and live life that expresses like a family for families?
Yes, ma'am. But I would first, of course, like to make a small correction. I wouldn't say what I do is anything different than anyone else. So hero is quite a heavy uh, title. And I, once again, humbly thank you. But, that's the only thing I like to say about that. But now, as far as how I am a hero in my own household, is I am surrounded by good company, in the respect that, like with my wife and I, we are evenly yoked. And so we have the capability of not always agreeing. And yet she gives, I give, and quite obviously, I try and be a man worthy of her submitting to me. You follow what I'm saying? Because some people expect that you just submit, or you should submit because they use a biblical resource or something of that particular nature, which colors their views. But if that man is not worthy, I don't believe that a woman should follow him. And if that's a weak man, whether it be his habits, such as alcoholism or um, womanizing, which was, you know, something I have a little bit of experience with, that individual is not worthy to lead that family. So he has to adjust his plumb line to do the things that he wants to see from his spouse, from his family, because of course, the family is the cornerstone of our society. And we have to interact with our children, we have to interact with our spouses, and what we believe and the values that we hold inadvertently will also spill out into our society. And they will also basically adopt, in some cases, those norms and what is acceptable and what is not. And that is how, I try and, of course, live my life once again with humility and, trying to, of course, be what I'd like to see.
Hmm. I like that, Mr. Hildebrand. I like that you said humbly, I am not a hero. I'm aligned with other individuals when it comes to that. But I am a man that my wife can submit to. I like that. And when you spoke there, I heard you talk about some challenges that you had. So I would like for you to share with everyone, Troy, about barriers and challenges and maybe some restrictions that has forced your resiliency, that has forced you to be able to bounce back.
Yes, ma'am. Well, one of the first things that come to mind, as you already understand, I am a soldier. I am a combat infantryman, and very proud to be so. But with that title and the action comes weight, and the weight of sometimes your soldiers not coming home. As leaders, we make all of these promises, these internal promises that you're telling your soldier subversively, or maybe not subversively, but just kind of within your own self, that if you listen to me, you're going to come back home. And that is God's lane, but it takes you a while to learn that, because when you lose your soldiers, you have what is called survivor's guilt. And that is one of the things that I'd had to live with for years, with the loss of, a few individuals that I was near and dear to, because, like it says, in my particular trade as an infantryman and a leader, your soldiers are all the soldiers, no matter who they belong to. And those soldiers would come to you because they know you feel that way. And taking care of them isn't always a warm hug. Sometimes it's a swift kick in the pants. So, with that being said, on the previous note, one of the biggest challenges I, like the rest, I'm sure, have had to deal with post traumatic stress, survivor's guilt. And the best way to deal with it are several. And one of those that I would suggest to anybody that's, of course, going through this is to seek some counseling. It's not unmanly to do so or unwomanly to do so. It is very much manly, very much womanly to do that. And then you have to take it one day at a time, because some days are good and then some days are not so good.
Some days are good and some days are not so good. Troy, I want to ask you about mission. When we first started talking, I heard you speak about mission. So I wanted to ask you, do you believe, like right now, that you are on a mission, that you have a mission? What is your current mission? What is your current mission, Mr. Hildebrand?
That's a outstanding question. Honestly, in a nutshell, my current mission, Lee, is peace, and trying to extend that peace to others. And how I do it, because I'm not the most social individual. No one will ever accuse me of liking people that much less talking to people that much, to do it in a forum per se. But how I try and reach people is through social media. And I make sometimes little silly posts, sometimes thought provoking posts. Sometimes the posts are specifically for me. And if you get something out of it, then great, you know. But my mission now is trying to spread that peace. After living a life of chaos, I've lived a life of chaos, and I'm talking about before the military and through the military. I chose chaos over peace. And it's good to be on this side where I have peace in my home, I have peace in my spirit, and I have peace in my mind. And there's so many people out there that are still looking for that very thing.
Kind of deep, kind of thought provoking. Is this what I would find if I was on your social media pages?
Most of the time.
Oh, we're talking about media. We spoke of media, social media. So, Troy, a hard question. I think this question is kind of hard. I wouldn't be able to answer it if you were to ask it of me. What is your image of you?
Oh, that's a good one. That's another good one. You have some bangers. Oh my God. My image of myself is I'm a man that I love my family. I'm a man that loves God, and I don't mean it in the relative nature that religion dictates, for the world. I mean it in the agape, true sense of it, in my belief. Um, and with that being said, I also love my country. And out of those three, I would do the most terrible things to anyone that ever tried to threaten those things. The
The most
most
terrible
terrible thing.
things, the most terrible things.
Yes, yes.
So he said that he will do the most terrible things for anyone, to anyone who tries to threaten those things. So with that said, I want to know, Troy, what is the legacy you want people to remember Mr. Troy Hilderbrand by? What do you want them to remember of you?
I would like them to remember, if nothing else, that God loves everybody. God loves everybody, no matter our faults, no matter how many mistakes we make. Um, you know, the Bible teaches us even David was a killer, and God loved him. So with that, it made me have hope for myself, but that I love God.
I like that. You're right. God didn't have any punk soldiers. I just don't recall that. None. Uh, last question, Troy. What mindset do you recommend for current service members who plan to live life on the other side of the military?
Well, ma'am, I first and foremost would once again, I would call for them to be humble, because of the fact that, when you spent a career in the military, 20, 30 years and so on and so forth, in most cases, you're either a high ranking non-commissioned officer or a high ranking officer. Once you get out of the military, unless you are fortunate enough to find a job in your field or something, you start at square one. And pride does not feed, clothe, or house your family. So you have to be humble, and you have to go in the mindset of being professional and humble. One of the biggest examples is, I remember my first contracting job. I was in competition with all command sergeants majors, or prior command sergeants majors, and they couldn't stop being command sergeants majors. So with that being said, I got the hire and the pretty hefty paycheck with it. And, you know,
I like that, Mr. Hildebrand. Mr. Hildebrand, I said that was my last question of you. Um, but I wanted to know, is there anything else that you would like to share that maybe I didn't prompt from a question?
well, I just want to commend you, Lee, for, of course, all that you do to put positivity out in the world, because, of course, there's a lot of reporters of the apocalypse, meaning there's a lot of negativity. We see it on social media, we see it on our TVs all the time, and it's always good to see someone that has something positive to say, that shares something positive. And once again, as I said before, I commend you for that. Um, but in addition, I would also, of course, once again, to let everybody know that they need to, of course, no matter where their station in life is, take one day at a time. Every journey begins with one step, and you just have to be resilient. You have to be tough. Hard times don't last, but hard people do.
Mm. Hard times don't last, but hard people do. So that is how we will end it today with Mr. Troy Hildebrand. Mr. Hildebrand, I thank you so much for joining us today. I am more than positive that this video would be shared and liked and enjoyed by many people.
It is indeed my honor. And you have a great, great